What if I told you that the most emotionally devastating scene in any movie released in 2024, not a war film, not a tragedy, not a prestige drama, came from a Pixar animated movie about a 13-year-old girl going to hockey camp? What if I told you that scene made grown adults in theater seats across America physically weep, not just tear up, not just get a little misty, but full-on sob, in the dark, surrounded by strangers and children eating popcorn? And what if I told you that the reason it hit so hard wasn't because something terrible happened, but because something true happened? Something so deeply, uncomfortably, painfully true about who we are, how we feel, and how we build our identities, that audiences couldn't help but recognize themselves in a cartoon character who doesn't even exist. That movie is Inside Out 2. And today, we are going all the way in. Welcome back. If you're new here, grab a seat, hit that subscribe button, because this is the kind of deep dive you don't find everywhere. We're talking story breakdown, character analysis, thematic excavation, emotional forensics, we're doing all of it. If you've seen the film, you're going to see it in a completely new light. If you haven't seen it yet, first of all, what are you doing? But also, stay with me, because this video is designed to work either way. Inside Out 2 is, on the surface, a sequel to Pixar's 2015 masterpiece Inside Out. But calling it just a sequel is like calling the Grand Canyon just a hole. This film does something rare, something genuinely brave in animated cinema. It doesn't just build on its predecessor, it challenges it. It says, what if the version of yourself you built as a kid isn't the whole story? What if there are parts of you that you haven't met yet? And what if meeting them is the most terrifying, disorienting, beautiful thing that has ever happened to you? So let's talk about it. Let's really talk about it. From the opening frame to the final shot, from the performances to the philosophy, from the animation to the music, we're covering everything. Buckle in. This is Inside Out 2, and it is so much more than you think. Section 2, Movie Overview, Release, Cast, Context, Expectations. Inside Out 2 was released on June 14, 2024, distributed by Walt Disney Pictures and produced by Pixar Animation Studios. It was directed by Kelsey Mann, who was stepping into the director's chair for his first feature film, a fact that, when you consider the monumental weight of the first film's legacy, deserves enormous acknowledgement. This man inherited one of the most beloved Pixar properties ever created and had to not just match it, but justify its continuation. Spoiler, he more than pulled it off. The film was written by Meg LaFauve, who co-wrote the original, and Dave Holstein. Pete Docter, who directed the original Inside Out and won the Academy Award for it, served as executive producer and was deeply involved in the creative direction. So this was not a cash grab sequel greenlit by committee. The creative DNA of the first film ran straight through this one. In terms of cast, the film brought back Amy Poehler as Joy, the dominant emotion who anchors both movies. Phyllis Smith returned as Sadness, Louis Black came back as Anger, Mindy Kaling reprised Disgust, and Tony Hale took over as Fear from Bill Hader, who played the character in the original. The recasting of Fear was relatively minor in the discourse. Tony Hale brought an entirely different comedic energy, slightly more bumbling and anxious, which honestly fits the character of a 13-year-old's Fear better than Hader's more sardonic version. But the headline additions, the real attractions, were the new emotions introduced in the film. Maya Hawke voiced anxiety, and if there is one casting decision in this movie that must be celebrated above all others, it is this one. We'll get deep into her character later, but Maya Hawke doesn't just voice anxiety, she embodies her with such nuanced, layered, terrifyingly relatable energy that the character becomes one of the most psychologically complex figures in Pixar history. Also joining the new emotions roster, Io Edebiri as Envy, Adele Exarchopoulos as Ennui, the spectacular French-accented emotion of teenage boredom, and Paul Walter Hauser as Embarrassment, a huge, gentle, pink figure who barely speaks but communicates everything through expression and posture. The film's human protagonist is Riley Andersen, now 13 years old, voiced by Kensington Tallman. And the casting of a young, fresh voice for a pubescent Riley is intentional. This is not the same Riley we knew. She's changing. Everything about her is changing. And the voice confirms it. Now, the cultural context. Inside Out 2 arrived at a very particular moment in Hollywood. The animation industry had been struggling. Pixar's pandemic releases had bypassed theaters entirely. Soul, Luca, Turning Red, all went straight to Disney+. Lightyear flopped in theaters. Elemental underperformed massively on its opening weekend before a slow burn word-of-mouth recovery. There was real fear that Pixar's box office magic was gone. That audiences had moved on. Inside Out 2 obliterated that narrative. The film grossed over $1.6 billion worldwide, making it the highest-grossing animated film since Frozen 2 in 2019, and the highest-grossing film of 2024 overall. It was a cultural moment. It trended on social media for weeks. People posted about it the way they post about events, concerts, sporting moments, personal milestones. I just saw Inside Out 2 and I'm not okay. That was basically a genre of tweet by July 2024. Audience expectations going in were complex. Fans of the original adored it for its emotional honesty and psychological ingenuity. They wanted the sequel to honor that. They were cautiously optimistic. Critics were measured. Sequels rarely match originals. And children had no idea what they were walking into. What they got was something nobody entirely predicted, a film that was smarter, more emotionally ambitious, and in certain ways more adult than the first one, while still being completely accessible to kids. A film that made children laugh and made their parents silently shatter into pieces. A film that said, growing up isn't just about having new experiences. It's about losing certainty. It's about the self you thought you were suddenly becoming. Insufficient. Let's start from the beginning. Section 3, Full Story Breakdown. Chronological, scene by scene, with commentary. Act 1, Who Riley Is Now. The film opens with what feels like a victory lap. We're back in Riley's head, the headquarters of her mind, and it is thriving. Joy, sadness, anger, fear, and disgust are all operating in beautiful, well-organized harmony. The console, the central emotion control system, lights up with warm, golden glow. Everything works. Everything is fine. And that, right there, is the setup for the entire movie. Because when everything is fine, something is about to change. We catch up with Riley at 13 years old. She's in 8th grade. She's killing it at hockey. She has her two best friends Bree and Grace. She's funny and warm and awkward in the charming way kids her age are supposed to be awkward. The animation in these early scenes is gorgeous. Pixar's rendering of the physical world has gotten almost photorealistic in certain lighting conditions, and the hockey sequences are kinetic and thrilling in ways animated sports scenes almost never are. But what we're really watching is the establishment of Riley's sense of self. And this is where the film's central innovation comes in. In the first movie, we learned about core memories, pivotal emotional experiences that shaped Riley's personality islands. In this movie, we learn about something deeper, the belief system, a vast, glowing archive deep in the back of Riley's mind that contains every conclusion she has ever drawn about who she is. I am a good person. I am a good friend. I work hard. I am brave. These beliefs form a kind of spiritual infrastructure. They are the foundation that Joy has lovingly, carefully built over 13 years. Joy guards this archive like a shrine. She understands, even if she doesn't fully articulate it, that these beliefs are Riley. Damage them, and you damage the girl herself. The film's first act is generous with Joy, pun intended, because it wants you to feel the beauty of what's about to be disrupted. Riley's life, right now, right here, at the top of the film, is good. She's loved. She has friends. She has passion. She has self-worth. And Pixar lets you sit in that warmth, lets you appreciate it, lets you exhale, so that when the disruption comes, you feel it as completely as Riley does. Then comes the news. Riley has been invited to an intensive hockey camp at Reginald Andersen Ice Rink. Wait, no, That's not right, let me back up. She's been invited to a week-long training camp run by the high school's varsity team. This is huge. This is her shot at being seen by the coaches who could put her on the team for high school. It's a dream. It's also terrifying. But there's a complication. Bree and Grace, her two best friends, her whole world, are not invited. And more than that, Riley finds out that they'll be attending a different high school. They're being separated. The three of them, by the geography of school districts and the merciless logic of growing up, are going to be split apart. Riley tries to be okay. She smiles. She tells them it'll be fine. We'll always be friends, she says, and she means it, she really means it, but deep inside her head, sadness is already pressing the console, and joy is already beginning to sense that something large and heavy is on the horizon. This moment, the goodbye to childhood friendships, is something almost every person watching this film will feel somewhere in their chest. Because that transition point, from middle school to high school, is one of the first genuinely adult griefs of a young person's life. The friends you thought would be eternal drift. And you feel it before it even happens. You grieve the future in advance. That's the movie. Act 2: the puberty alarm and the arrival of anxiety. Then the alarm sounds. In Riley's headquarters, without warning, a full-body alert cascades through the control room. Red lights, sirens, a mechanical klaxon. And then, the console physically changes. New buttons appear. New levers. The whole system expands, crackles with new energy, and the existing emotions look around in bewilderment. A construction crew moves in. And out of a massive shipping crate, like a creature emerging from a chrysalis, anxiety arrives. This scene is perfect. Anxiety doesn't burst in like a villain. She doesn't menace or threaten. She arrives with a to-do list. She arrives with plans. She's enthusiastic, over-prepared, breathlessly cheerful in a way that feels familiar to anyone who has ever felt that particular flavor of dread, the kind dressed up as productivity. She has spreadsheets. She has contingencies. She has color-coded files. And anxiety immediately takes over. Not through force, through logic. She argues that Riley's old system was fine for childhood, but now they're heading into high school. Now the stakes are real. Now one wrong move, one bad impression, one moment of embarrassment could define Riley for the next 4 years. Joy's approach, living in the moment, finding the good, celebrating what is, anxiety argues, naive and dangerous. Maya Hawke sells every single word of this with absolute conviction. Because the terrifying thing about anxiety isn't that she's wrong. She's not entirely wrong. High school is higher stakes. Social dynamics do harden. First impressions do matter more. Anxiety isn't irrational, she's just overclocked. She's running calculations that are technically valid but scaled to a level of intensity that becomes paralyzing. What anxiety wants is for Riley to impress Valentina Ortiz, the star of the high school hockey team, the coolest senior, the girl who seems to have it all figured out, so that Riley will be accepted into the varsity social world, cementing her place at the new school before it even begins. It's a plan. It's a reasonable plan. But the methods. Act 3, Joy gets ejected. Here's where the film shifts from a warm, funny Pixar adventure into something more complicated and more honest. Anxiety, in her terrified campaign to protect Riley's future, makes a decision. She takes all of Joy's carefully curated core memories, all the golden, warm beliefs at the heart of Riley's sense of self, and she puts them away. She locks them in a vault deep in Riley's mind, far from the headquarters where emotions run the show. In their place, she builds a new set of beliefs designed not around who Riley is, but who anxiety needs Riley to be to survive high school. I am only as good as my last performance. I have to earn my place. Nobody actually likes me, they just tolerate me. These are the new building blocks. And if that doesn't make your stomach drop, you haven't been paying attention. Joy, sadness, anger, fear, and disgust are literally physically ejected from headquarters, blasted out through a tube into the vast wilderness of Riley's subconscious mind. And now the real adventure begins, because Joy and the gang have to find their way back, recover the core memories, and restore Riley's sense of self before anxiety's new belief system becomes permanent. The journey through Riley's mind is where the first movie shined, and Inside Out 2 absolutely delivers here. The world building is spectacular and inventive in ways that feel like the filmmakers spent years thinking about what the mind is like for a teenager specifically. There's the stream of consciousness, a rushing river of random thought, bizarre connections, and half-remembered information. There's the archive, an almost infinite library of memories, organized and cross-referenced in ways that feel eerily accurate. There's the sarcasm, an actual physical gap in the terrain that represents sarcasm, dark and difficult to cross, which is very funny. There's a place where forgotten memories go, populated by the faded, melancholy remnants of things Riley used to care about. And there's the deepest, most protected place in Riley's mind, the archive where her belief system lives. It's not just a location. It's architectural. It's the geography of an interior life. And it's gorgeous. Meanwhile, back in headquarters, anxiety is running everything, and the film shows us, in real time, what that looks like from the outside. Riley at hockey camp begins to change. She's overeager. She laughs too hard at the older girls' jokes. She abandons her personality in favor of performance. She becomes a version of herself that's been calculated to impress rather than one that emerges naturally. She drifts from being genuinely funny and warm to being strategically agreeable. She starts to mirror Valentina, her idol, her target, the person she's decided she needs to be close to. And the film is unflinching in showing us how unappealing this is. How the people around Riley sense something is off, even if they can't name it. How Bree and Grace, who show up at camp as spectators, notice that their best friend is acting like a stranger. This is one of the film's most painful sequences, and it's painful precisely because it is so recognizable. Every person watching this has either been the Riley who lost themselves trying to fit in, or has watched someone they loved do exactly that. Act 4, The Vault and the Vision of Riley's Future. Back in the mind, Joy's journey gets deeper and more emotionally charged. With sadness, anger, fear, and disgust, she pushes toward the vault where the core memories are locked. But along the way, she encounters something she wasn't prepared for. Anxiety's secret weapon, a vision of Riley's possible future. Anxiety has been running simulations, projections of what Riley's life could look like if everything goes wrong. Failed team tryouts. Social rejection. A lonely high school career. And, worst of all, a vision of Riley as someone diminished. Someone who gave up. Someone who never became who she could have been. And Joy, watching these projections, has a moment of genuine crisis. Because she has to confront the question at the heart of her entire existence: is optimism enough? Is finding the good, celebrating joy, living in the present, is that a sufficient strategy for a teenager about to face real adult complexity? The first movie's emotional climax was built on Joy learning to value sadness. This movie's climax is built on something more existential, Joy confronting the limits of herself. The idea that happiness, as a philosophy, might be incomplete. That a person cannot navigate adolescence, or adulthood, on joy alone. That the uncomfortable emotions have to be allowed to operate, not contained, not suppressed, not managed from a distance. This is where Inside Out 2 transcends its predecessor for me. The first film was about the necessity of sadness. This film is about the necessity of all of it, including the ones that terrify us. Act 5, The Panic Attack, cinema's most honest portrayal of anxiety. Here we need to pause, because what happens next is genuinely extraordinary. Riley, at camp, has been running on anxiety's fuel for days. She's been performing, calculating, performing again. She's been suppressing the discomfort, ignoring the signals, overriding the moments where her authentic self tries to surface. And then, at the most crucial moment, before the most important scrimmage of camp, the one the varsity coach is watching, she breaks. It starts as a tight chest. Then a spinning head. Then an inability to breathe properly. Then a full cascade, racing heart, narrowing vision, a sense of impending doom that has no specific object. It's a panic attack. And Pixar animates it from inside Riley's head with a specificity and accuracy that mental health professionals have publicly praised. In headquarters, anxiety has been spinning. She's been running so many projections simultaneously that the system is overloading. She's been pulling every lever, pressing every button, trying to optimize, trying to control, and she's broken the machine. The console is sparking. The emotions she recruited to help her, envy, ennui, embarrassment, are frozen, overwhelmed. And anxiety herself is drowning. This is the pivot. This is the moment where anxiety stops being the film's antagonist and becomes its most tragic figure. Because she never wanted to hurt Riley. She never wanted to cause pain. She just cared too much. She wanted to protect her so badly that she became the thing she was protecting her from. Joy finally reaches headquarters during this chaos. She gets to the vault. She breaks it open. The core memories, all that warm, golden light, flood back into the system. But here's what's remarkable, Joy doesn't immediately use them to fix everything. She doesn't just slam them back into the console and reboot Riley to factory settings. Because she's learned something on this journey. The core memories alone are not enough. They represent the best of Riley, but they don't represent all of Riley. The new memories, the anxious ones, the embarrassing ones, the moments of envy and ennui and confusion, they belong here too. They're real. They're part of her. And a self built only from your best moments is as incomplete as a self built only from your worst. Act 6, The Resolution. What Joy does instead is beautiful, and if this scene doesn't wreck you, I genuinely don't know what to tell you. She holds the golden core memories in one hand. And she looks at the new memories, the complicated, messy, painful ones, in the other. And she chooses to put all of them into the belief system together. What emerges is something new, something more complete. A sense of self that isn't just the highlight reel of Riley's best moments, it's the full picture. The whole person. I am Riley Andersen. I am a good person. I try hard. I make mistakes. I get scared. I can be selfish. I want to be better. I love my friends. I am still becoming who I'm going to be. That is the new belief. Whole and flawed and real. In the outside world, Riley comes back to herself. She's been on the ice, playing poorly, and she finally does something extraordinary. She stops performing and starts playing. She stops trying to be the person Valentino will like and just becomes herself, a kid who loves hockey, who works hard, who has fun when she lets herself. And the result is the kind of moment that actually moves coaches, actually builds relationships, a genuine, unguarded display of who she really is. The reconciliation with Bree and Grace happens organically. They weren't mad at Riley for drifting, they were just confused. And the three of them reconnect in a way that feels earned, not forced. Because Riley isn't performing anymore. The final scene, Riley crying after the game, surrounded by her team, a complicated mess of emotions all operating at once, is one of the most honest depictions of what it feels like to be human that Pixar has ever put on screen. Joy watches the tears on Riley's face and finally understands what she couldn't understand before. This isn't Joy losing. This is Riley growing. Section 4, Character and Performance Analysis. Deep dive into every major character. Joy, Amy Poehler. Joy is the character who carries the most arc in this film, and that's interesting because Joy carried the arc of the first film too, but where the first film's Joy was learning to accept another emotion's validity, this Joy is learning to accept her own limitations. Amy Poehler has this incredible ability to make Joy's relentless optimism feel genuine rather than grating. There's warmth in her voice, real warmth, not the fake chirpiness of a character who's been written to be annoying. And in Inside Out 2, Poehler digs into the cracks in Joy's certainty with quiet, underplayed skill. The moments where Joy is genuinely lost, genuinely afraid, genuinely unsure, Poehler doesn't play them big. She plays them small and still and honest, and they hit harder for it. Joy's arc is essentially about letting go of control, about understanding that a life without struggle, without discomfort, without anxiety, is not a full life. It's a life edited for comfort. And the edited version isn't better. It's just smaller. Anxiety, Maya Hawke. There is no version of this movie review that doesn't spend significant time on Maya Hawke's anxiety, because this is a genuinely great voice performance in any context, animated or otherwise. Hawke gives anxiety a quality that is almost impossible to achieve. She makes her likable and terrifying at the same time. Anxiety is funny. She's enthusiastic. She has great ideas and genuine warmth and real love for Riley. And she's absolutely destroying Riley from the inside. Those things coexist, and Hawke never lets you forget either of them. The scene where anxiety's overloaded system begins to collapse, where she's spinning, calling out commands, unable to stop, unable to breathe, is Hawke's finest moment in the film. Because anxiety, in that moment, is having an anxiety attack herself. She's become the thing she fears. And Hawke plays it as pure tragedy. The line that wrecked me, and I'll paraphrase it here because it's one of those lines that will stay with you, is when anxiety, surrounded by chaos, finally admits, I was just trying to protect her. That's it. That's the whole character. That's the whole film, in 7 words. Riley, Kensington Tallman. The physical performance demands of an animated protagonist are enormous, but what's asked of the voice actors is subtler, and Kensington Tallman delivers with every scene. She plays Riley's social calculation with uncomfortable accuracy. The voice Tallman gives Riley at camp, slightly higher, slightly faster, laugh track eager, versus the voice of Riley being real with her friends is a genuinely impressive piece of acting from someone so young. The new emotions, envy, ennui, embarrassment. The supporting new emotions are delightful. Ida Beery's envy is sharp and funny and knows exactly when to deploy a well-timed pang of jealousy. Alexia Coppola's ennui, described as the French emotion of bored numbness, is an absolute comedic revelation. The choice to give her a thick French accent and have her operate the controls with maximum disaffection while lying on a chaise lounge is inspired. And embarrassment, Paul Walter Hauser's giant, red-faced, barely verbal gentle giant, is surprisingly moving. He has almost no lines but communicates volumes through his body language, and there's a tenderness to him that the film uses beautifully at key moments. Section 5, Themes, Symbolism and Subtext. Hidden Meanings, Philosophy, Social Commentary. The Architecture of Identity. The film's central intellectual contribution, the thing that elevates it from great entertainment to something genuinely philosophical, is its treatment of identity as architecture. The belief system isn't just a clever story device. It's a statement about how selfhood works. We are not born with a self. We build one. We build it from experiences and conclusions and the stories we tell about those experiences. And crucially, the film argues, that building process never stops. The self is always under construction. The mistake we make, and the mistake Joy makes in the first act, is thinking the construction is done. Thinking that the identity built in childhood is the final version. Adolescence is the first major renovation. And like any renovation, it's disruptive, messy, and often looks like destruction before it looks like improvement. Anxiety as evolutionary necessity. The film makes a sophisticated argument about anxiety that is worth articulating clearly. Anxiety is not a malfunction. She is a feature. Her role, scanning the horizon for threats, running projections, preparing contingencies, is genuinely valuable. The problem isn't that she exists. The problem is the volume. This distinction is psychologically accurate and therapeutically significant. Modern mental health discourse has done enormous work in helping people understand that anxiety isn't just a bug in your software, it's an adaptive mechanism that evolved to keep humans alive. The question is calibration. The question is whether the mechanism is running at appropriate levels for the actual threat level, or whether it's treating a minor social situation like an existential crisis. Inside Out 2 dramatizes this with uncommon precision. And by doing so, it validates the experience of anxious viewers, particularly anxious young viewers, while also giving them a framework for understanding what's happening inside them. The self is not a highlight reel. The film's resolution, Joy integrating the complicated, embarrassing, anxious memories into the belief system rather than replacing them with purely positive ones, is a direct argument against the kind of toxic positivity that often passes for mental health advice on social media. Good vibes only. Think positive. Don't let negativity in. This is bad advice. This is the philosophy that anxiety, ironically, is also pedaling, just in a negative direction. Both joy's only happy memories approach and anxiety's only fear-based projections approach are forms of editing the self. And you cannot build an authentic identity from edited material. The real self is messy. It contains contradictions. It contains things you're proud of and things you're ashamed of. And the only way forward is integration, not curation. Friendship and the fear of being known. There's a subplot about Riley's relationship with Valentina, the older hockey star she idolizes, that functions as a metaphor for performed friendship versus real connection. Riley works so hard to be what Valentina wants that she loses track of what she actually brings to the relationship. And paradoxically, it's when Riley stops performing, when she just plays hockey, when she just is herself, that Valentina actually takes notice. This is a truth most of us learn eventually. People don't actually want the polished, curated version of you. They want the real one. The polished version is actually less interesting, because it's familiar. Authenticity is specific, and specificity is compelling. Section 6, Technical and Artistic Review. Direction, Animation, Score, Sound Design. Direction, Kelsey Mann. Kelsey Mann's direction is confident in ways that mask how incredibly hard his job was. Sequels to beloved films require a director who can honor the original's aesthetic and emotional grammar while expanding it into new territory. Mann does this seamlessly. The headquarters scenes feel continuous with the first film while also reflecting the chaos and expansion of adolescence. He paces the emotional beats with a rhythm that keeps the film from becoming exhausting despite its emotional intensity. His greatest directorial achievement might be the panic attack sequence, a scene that required visual invention, emotional accuracy, and narrative clarity all at once. The decision to show anxiety's internal collapse as a literal physical system failure, sparking consoles, overloaded circuits, a mind running too hot, is cinematic problem solving at its finest. Animation. The animation in Inside Out 2 is, without qualification, some of the finest work Pixar has ever done. The physical world, Riley's hockey games, the camp environment, the Pacific Northwest landscapes, is rendered with a level of naturalistic detail that approaches photoreal while maintaining the warmth of animation. The lighting in particular deserves praise, the golden late afternoon light of the first act, the cool blues and purples of the mindscape, the warm chaos of the emotion headquarters. Every palette choice is emotionally calibrated. The design of the new emotions is brilliant. Anxiety's visual design, wiry, constantly in motion, golden orange in color, with hair that seems to generate its own static electricity, is perfect. She looks like anxiety feels. Ennui's design, long, purple, perpetually slouched, draped in ennui like a physical quality, is equally precise. These characters aren't just visually distinctive. They're visually diagnostic. The sequences in Riley's subconscious are the animation team showing off, and they've earned the right. The stream of consciousness looks like a river that flows through several incompatible landscapes simultaneously. The archives corridors stretch to infinity. The vault where joy's core memories are stored pulses with light like a living thing. This is a world built by artists who took the assignment seriously and then exceeded it. Score, Andrea Datzman. Andrea Datzman composed the score for Inside Out 2. Building on the memorable themes Michael Giacchino established in the first film. Datzman's work here is delicate and precise. The music knows when to lead and when to follow. The main theme, when it returns at the climax, carries weight because the film has been patient with it. The score doesn't reach for your emotions, it waits until you've arrived where it knew you'd end up. The music during the panic attack sequence is worth particular mention. It builds in a way that mirrors the sensation of spiraling anxiety with uncomfortable accuracy. There's a tightness to the orchestration, a quality of too many notes too close together, that functions almost as a sonic representation of an overloaded system. It's technically sophisticated and emotionally devastating. Sound design. The sound design in the headquarters sequences, the particular tone of the emotional console, the mechanical sounds of the belief system being rebuilt, the way certain sound effects carry emotional resonance that the animation alone couldn't achieve, is first-rate. The filmmakers clearly understood that what you hear in the mindscape should feel different from what you hear in the physical world. The sounds of the mind are slightly too clean, too precise, slightly uncanny, they feel interior rather than exterior, which is exactly right. Section 7, Critical Review and Comparisons, Strengths, Weaknesses, Honest Critique. Strengths. Let me count them. Inside Out 2 succeeds in an almost unusual number of ways. Its central metaphor is elegant and expandable. Its emotional beats land with precision. Its humor is genuinely funny, not performed for kids funny, actually funny. The new characters are strong additions rather than franchise padding. The pacing is confident without being slow. And the thematic content is sophisticated enough to spark real conversation, which is the highest compliment you can pay a family film. The film also does something that sequels almost never do. It uses the existence of the first film to its advantage. The audience's emotional investment in Riley, in joy, in the world of emotions, the film knows you have that investment, and it deliberately uses it as a lever. When things go wrong for characters we already love, it hits harder. That's not a cheat. That's good storytelling. Weaknesses. The film is not perfect. The second act, during which Joy and her team are journeying through the mindscape toward the vault, occasionally loses momentum. There are sequences that feel like they exist primarily to fill time between emotional beats rather than advance the story with purpose. The joke density in the middle act drops, and some of the set pieces, while visually inventive, feel like distractions from the more urgent emotional narrative happening back in headquarters. Valentino as a character, while serving a clear thematic function, is never developed into a full person. She remains a projection, which is somewhat the point, since Riley's perception of her is based on idealization rather than reality, but still leaves the film with an important supporting character who feels underfurnished. And there's a structural argument to be made that the film resolves its central conflict somewhat quickly once Joy reaches the vault. The conclusion is emotionally satisfying but slightly compressed. You might want a bit more time in the integration, a bit more breathing room in the aftermath, before the credits roll. Comparisons. Inside Out 2 invites comparison to its predecessor and, in my view, holds up to that comparison admirably. The original Inside Out broke new ground in terms of what animated cinema could address: grief, identity, the value of negative emotion. Inside Out 2 builds on that foundation and takes the argument further. If Inside Out was about learning to feel sad, Inside Out 2 is about learning to feel everything: anxiety, envy, embarrassment, ennui, and understanding that those feelings are not enemies of selfhood but ingredients of it. Compared to other animated sequels, Inside Out 2 is in rare company. It belongs alongside Toy Story 2, Toy Story 3, and Shrek 2 as sequels that genuinely justify their existence, that add to the original rather than merely echoing it. It does not belong in the category of animated sequels that exist purely as revenue generators. This film was made because the filmmakers had something to say, and they said it well. Beyond the Pixar universe, the film invites comparison to other coming-of-age dramas that deal with identity and anxiety: Lady Bird, 8th Grade, The Perks of Being a Wallflower. Inside Out 2 covers similar psychological territory to those films but does so in animated form and for a broader audience. The fact that its emotional honesty rivals those live-action works is a significant achievement. The anxiety representation discourse. It's worth addressing the conversation this film sparked around mental health representation. Mental health advocates and therapists widely praised Inside Out 2 for its portrayal of anxiety, not as a villain, not as a disease, but as a misaligned protective mechanism. Multiple licensed therapists posted videos and articles explaining that they were recommending the film to their patients as a starting point for conversations about anxiety management. That doesn't happen with movies that get it wrong. That doesn't happen with films that sensationalize or simplify. Inside Out 2 got something right that most films, even serious, adult dramas, get wrong, and it did so in a children's movie. The cultural impact of that, for young viewers currently navigating anxiety in their own lives, cannot be overstated. Section 8, Final Verdict and Ending. Impact, legacy, who this film is for, rating. The last scene. Let me bring you back to the ending one more time, because I want to sit in it. Riley is crying. She's just finished the scrimmage, maybe they won, maybe they didn't, it doesn't really matter, and she's in a complicated emotional state that doesn't have a clean name. She's relieved and proud and exhausted and sad about her friends and excited about the future and scared about everything and genuinely, for the first time in days, present. And inside her head, all the emotions are gathered at the console. Joy, sadness, anger, fear, disgust, anxiety, envy, ennui, embarrassment, all of them. The old ones and the new ones. And for the first time, they're not fighting for the console. They're not taking turns. They're not in hierarchy. They're just together. Present with Riley. Feeling what she's feeling. Complicated and real and whole. And Joy says something, and again, I'll give you my paraphrase rather than the line itself, but it's something like, she doesn't know what happens next. She doesn't know who Riley will become. And she used to find that terrifying. But now, looking at all of this, looking at the fullness of who Riley is, complicated and growing and real, she finds it's something closer to wonder. That is the film's final statement. Not that everything is going to be okay. Not that anxiety goes away, or that growing up stops being hard, or that friendships always survive transitions, or that you'll always make the right call. Just that the person you're becoming, in all their messy, anxious, tender, striving imperfection, is worth being present for. Is worth watching with something like love. Overall message and impact. Inside Out 2 is a film about the construction and reconstruction of the self. It's about the particular turbulence of early adolescence, that seismic shift when the identity built in childhood begins to feel insufficient for the life ahead. It's about the function of anxiety, and why understanding it as a protective mechanism rather than a defect changes everything about how you relate to it. It's also, quietly, a film about the limits of positivity as a philosophy. Joy is a wonderful character and optimism is a genuine virtue, but optimism that insists on only seeing the good, that flinches from discomfort, that curates the self rather than accepting it, that's not strength. That's fragility dressed up as sunshine. And the film is honest enough to say so. For adults watching this film, there's something additionally resonant, the understanding that this process, the construction, the disruption, the reconstruction, never really stops. You don't figure it out at 13 and lock it in. You figure out a version of yourself, and then life disrupts it, and you integrate the disruption, and you figure out a new version. Over and over. That's not a crisis. That's a life. Who this film is for. This film is for everyone who ever tried to be a different version of themselves to fit in, and hated themselves a little for it. It's for everyone who has experienced anxiety, real anxiety, the kind that wakes you up at 3 in the morning with a tightening chest and a spiraling mind, and felt ashamed of it, or confused by it, or convinced that it made them broken. It's for parents who are watching their children become teenagers and don't quite recognize the person emerging from the chrysalis. It's for teenagers who don't quite recognize themselves. It's for anyone who has ever stood at a transition, school, job, relationship, city, and felt the vertigo of not knowing who they'd be on the other side. It's for kids who just want to watch a funny movie about emotions in someone's head. It works for all of them. That is the genuine achievement. Final rating. Inside Out 2, 9.2 out of 10. I debated a full 10. And here's why I stopped short. The second act sag is real, Valentina's character deserves more depth, and the resolution moves slightly too fast for what it's earned. These are real criticisms of a real film. But the things this movie does right, the emotional precision, the psychological sophistication, the genuinely groundbreaking treatment of anxiety, the animation, the performances, the final sequence that restructures everything that came before it, these aren't small things. These are the things that make a film matter beyond its opening weekend. These are the things that make a film last. Inside Out 2 will be watched by generations of children who will grow into adults who remember it. And some of them, 20 years from now, will be sitting in a therapist's office or having a conversation with someone they love or standing at a mirror in a moment of self-reckoning. and they'll remember a scene from a cartoon they saw when they were 12. And something will click. That's not a small thing. That's a very large thing, wearing an animated disguise. Closing remarks, sign off for YouTube narration. So that's it. That's Inside Out 2, all of it. The story, the characters, the themes, the craft, the heart. And if you're sitting there right now with a slightly strange feeling in your chest, something between gratitude and sadness and recognition, then I think the film did its job. And I think this video did its job too. If you've already seen the movie, I hope this gave you new ways to think about what you watched. If you haven't seen it yet, it's on Disney+, go watch it tonight, and come back and tell me which moment got you, because I guarantee something did. Drop a comment. What was your moment? What hit you hardest? Was it the panic attack sequence? Was it joy at the vault? Was it the final scene with all the emotions together? I read every comment, seriously, every single one, and I want to know. Hit the like button if this video added something to your day. Subscribe if you're new, because we do this kind of deep dive regularly. We take films seriously, we take storytelling seriously, and we believe that good movies deserve the kind of attention that reveals what's actually inside them. I'm your name. This has been Inside Out 2. Take care of yourselves out there. And maybe, just maybe, make a little more room for all your emotions. Even the inconvenient ones. Especially those